Having spent years, no, decades, hating on a particular genre, I am now getting round to convincing myself to maybe be a little less harsh and give them a try. And this has provided some mixed results so far. I have spent a small amount of time playing some old Toaplan games, such as Truxton, Flying Shark and Fire Shark, and I am seeing now that most of the games are very similar. That is to say that Toaplan had a certain style of game they stuck to. This might explain how the company went under in the early 90s, but I have found myself rather liking the odd one or two of their older games. Twin Cobra is a vertically scrolling shooter released for arcades in 1987. The players control an attack helicopter and must fight endless waves of military vehicles while avoiding collision with their projectiles and other obstacles. It followed similar Toaplan titles very closely in the gameplay department, with its use of limited range bombs and variety of power-ups, and also with its end-of-level bosses which just kind of appear. Some versions of the game allow you to return to a checkpoint when you die, and others you just respawn. But I think this was based on area localization or something. So if it plays so similar to other Toaplan shooters, why do I like this one and Flying Shark, but not others? It's very odd. What can I say about Twin Cobra that I like? Well, I did enjoy the game, much more than I thought I would actually, and I think it might be because of the difficulty curve. This game is tough, but it gradually gets harder the further you get into the game. Some other Toaplan games like Truxton seem to be very challenging straight from the very off. And yes, this game also has a Toaplan thing where enemy fire just starts to move towards you as you try and avoid it. The setting of the game as well, it once again seems to be showing Capcom what 1942 should have been like. A lot of other shooters mainly use spaceships and aliens for their setting. Twin Cobra is more like an earthbound wartime setting. Another thing I like with this game is the music. The tunes are fairly decent enough to add a little bit of excitement to the gameplay, and the rhythm of the music seems to keep in line with the pacing of the on-screen action, and the sound effects are really just what you would expect to find in a game of this type, with feeble explosions and repetitive bangs and booms for your shots. Visually the game is not brilliant, but it's okay I would say. I do like these explosion effects, and again, in some instances, the enemies leave this little crater behind once they've been blown up. Some of the enemy bosses look weak and weird, like this pair of tanks that look like a toaster on top of a Sega Master System 2. But in 1987, the Master System 2 was not even a thing. Maybe someone at Sega had been challenged to redesign the Master System in the 90s, and they were stuck on this game and just decided to copy that design. But the other enemies like the planes, helicopters and ground tanks all look pretty good. So even after looking at all of these positives, it's still hard to figure out what makes this game good, or more playable than other Toaplan games, especially when so many of them all play the same. But I guess that it is just down to personal preference. For me, the game has to be fun to play, otherwise, what is the point? And while I always favour good sound over good graphics, I think there's a little bit of everything from the graphics, the sound and the gameplay that all combine and mix up to make a pretty good game. The game was one of Toaplan's successes in the 80s, although not as successful as Flying Shark. It was still a triumph for them, and so it was inevitable it would appear on home formats. But the reception to those formats was even more mixed than what Toaplan expected. Twin Cobra was a game that was released onto the Mega Drive quite a few years after the arcade release, and also a few years into the life cycle of the Mega Drive. It was a game I had seen on many a used game shelf back in the day, and it was also a game that you would see constantly getting cheaper. Given that I was not interested in this genre all that much, especially in the early 90s, when beat 'em ups were coming into their stride, I always walked past the game. But was I right to ignore it? Well, thanks to emulation, I can give it a go and find out. And my first impression of Twin Cobra is not that good. Firstly, it's only a one-player game. The name of the game is Twin Cobra, but you fly solo. That's a bit like a double dragon game with only one dragon. And yes, I know the NES version of Double Dragon was only a single player, but people tell me that it was a fairly decent game, and I will have a look for myself at some point. But back to Twin Cobra, a single player game. So, off to a bad start. But once you press start and begin to play the game, all is saved. Twin Cobra on the Mega Drive is a very decent game in my opinion. It's not brilliant, far from it, but what is there is great fun to play. Visually, it seems to be a little blander than its arcade counterpart, with a lot of flat colours, but it's not the worst looking game I have ever seen, and the bright explosions help break up the drabness of the backgrounds. The enemy vehicles all look average at best, and again, they are all very drab. The music is good throughout in this game. I really do like a lot of the tunes in the game, good thumping beats that again seem to keep with the flow of the action, but again, like the arcade, the sound effects are a little lackluster. The gameplay is brilliant however, and honestly, in the single player game, after a few minutes, you don't even miss the addition of the second player. Two-player games are always so much more better, but Twin Cobra works just as well as a single player game, and the difficulty curve is like the arcade. It ramps up slowly, but overall the game on the Mega Drive is easier than the arcade version. I was playing to get footage for this video, I got totally hooked on it, and I found myself having a quick go between meetings, on my tea breaks, and generally when I had a spare 10 minutes or so. It was weirdly addictive, and it was great, playing an old game for the first time and still having a great time doing so. And it just shows that good games are always good, and it's not just nostalgia that keeps you coming back to them. I have played thousands of games in my life. I spent a huge amount of my free time in arcades playing video games at home, which is a product of a misspent youth. And I played some really good games, and I have played some really bad games. And the good games I played back then, I still play today. The bad games, maybe not so much. And even though my memories of the bad games still put a smile on my face as I reminisce of those carefree days, it's the good games that seem to provide better memories. But discovering games from my youth that I ignored, and then really liking them, really does reaffirm that good games will always be good to play, regardless of generation. And that was my look at Twin Cobra. If you like this video, then please do give me a sub and a thumbs up, or maybe even a comment or two below about your memories of Twin Cobra on any format. And a massive thank you to all those who have subscribed to my channel and commented on my videos. Your feedback and support really does go a long way in helping the channel grow, and I appreciate all of your contributions. So it's a massive thank you from me. And that's all from me, folks. Thanks for watching.